Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, Romantics. I'm here with award-winning author Emily Sullivan to talk about her newest release, A Death on Corfu. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You betcha, my pleasure. You're known for your Victorian romances, but you shifted literary gears just a bit to write a cozy, I guess it would be a cozy historical mystery with maybe a slow burn romance.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that how you describe it?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Okay. What sparked this desire to, write something a little bit different than what you have been doing?
I had always wanted to write a mystery. That was sort of when I thought about my writing career, that was one of my goals. So I kind of just in between, while I was working on other writing projects, I would kind of think about in the back of my mind, because when you're working on something, you're usually thinking about something else.
Especially the hard
Um,
parts, right?
right, yeah. So I just kind of started thinking about oh, if I were to write a mystery, what would it be like? And I liked the idea of writing about a widow, and I just kind of played with it over time, um, thinking about what kind of mystery I'd want to write. And then one day, I just all the pieces just kind of came together really suddenly, and I just had this idea for this book, and I felt pretty confident about it.
Okay, great. And how much time elapsed between that first seed to knowing you had a story?
Not too long, because I think I was finishing up if my first draft of Duchess material, which is my most recent historical romance, and I was wrapping that up, and I was getting ready to send it off to my editor, and I had this idea for this mystery, and I just kind of gave myself some time to work on it a little bit. And then I pitched the idea to my agent, and she loved it. And I told her, I was like, listen, I don't want to write a whole book if I don't have to.
Yeah.
And so she's like, okay, well, you should probably write 50 pages and we'll go out on sub. So as soon as I handed off Duchess material to my editor, I just started working on those pages. And I thought that I was going to get my edits back from my editor kind of soon. So I was really determined and really rushing to finish these pages, and that of course did not end up being the case. That book got pushed back a year. um but I did, I got my pages off to my agent, and we sent it off and it went on sub, and the rest is history, I
It's
guess.
history. Oh, that's great. I love happy endings like that whenever you
Yeah,
can pursue, whether it's been a long time passion or a short time passion, where you can pursue a passion project like that and
yeah,
they actually buy it
yeah,
and you
yeah,
can
great.
actually get it published and you actually see it on a cover someday.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
no, I think that's wonderful. So, what can you tell us about Minnie and A Death on Corfu? And for those of us who might be a little geographically challenged, and I include myself in that category, where in the world is Corfu?
Corfu is part of Greece. It's an island off, I guess it's the northwest coast of Greece. And it was a British protectorate for a while. So there are a lot of, even today, there's a British presence on the island.
Mhm.
And even after they gave the island back to, Greek control, a lot of British people continued to stay there. So when I was thinking about this book, I liked the idea of it not being set in England. And I was trying to think of a place that would make sense. And, I ended up thinking about Corfu. In part because I'd seen the PBS show, The Durrells of Corfu. So that was one of my thoughts, as I was kind of developing this idea.
Oh, that's great. I was kind of curious if you were able to visit it or if you had to do some extensive research, to get the flavor of it because I thought
Yeah.
it felt to me like you got the flavor of the island, really well.
So I've been to Greece a couple of times because my husband's parents are from Greece. And my mother-in-law is from Crete. So I've spent like a pretty good amount of time in Crete. But there was like a war going on in Crete at this
Yeah.
time. So I couldn't really set it there. But that's where a lot of it comes from. And just my familiarity with Greek culture, um, from being with my husband and around his family and
Yeah.
visiting the country. But I did also read, as I was doing research, I did read, like, I read The Durrells of Corfu, which is Gerald Durrell's memoir of living on the island. I think in the interwar period, it's before World War II, so that was helpful too, and just watching videos. So it's kind of a mix of all those things. But I have
Okay.
not been there. It's a pretty expensive place,
Mm,
I gather. But
yeah.
I would like to visit someday. We'll see.
Yeah, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Well, giving Minnie the ability to perform, say, let's say, administrative duties seemed
Mhm.
like a fresh choice, but also a natural one for that time period, which I think is like the late 1800s. Do I have
Yeah.
that right?
Yes. Yeah.
1890s, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, what led you to choose being a mystery writer for Stephen as a profession?
I don't I don't remember exactly. When I was originally thinking about writing a mystery, I was like, well, maybe the guy will be like a detective, or I thought it might be something in law enforcement and she can be the widow that's getting involved and these investigations. And then somewhere along the way, I think I was just like, well, what if he's like a mystery writer and he has writer's block and he's really grumpy about it. And maybe that's partly me, self-identifying or
Yeah.
something with a character. But I thought, like, well, you could still have this he understands, like, what goes into a mystery, but he's not actually like a detective himself, but he writes about one. I
Hmm.
just thought it sounded really fun. And yeah, I don't really, it was just one of those things that just happens sometimes where
Yeah,
your
yeah.
imagination just kind of sparks.
So yeah, so Minnie, she starts working for him as a
Mhm.
typist, I think
Yeah.
is what the proper title for her would be, because he's really behind on his manuscript, and his publisher is kind of giving him a hard time. They have a very firm deadline for him, so he's frantically writing and she's typing.
Mhm.
And then what happens?
So then they sort of have this antagonistic relationship. Um, and in the middle of of an argument they're having, she leaves the house, storms off, and then she finds a dead body.
Yeah.
So then, they sort of set off together solving this mystery because no one else seems terribly concerned about this murdered maid on the island.
Right. Yeah. I thought they both provided different perspectives
Hmm.
to the murder mystery solving. And was it his dad was Scotland Yard? Do I remember?
Yes.
I remember
Yes.
that. So he has a little bit of a exposure to
Yeah.
crime and how all of that works too. So that was helpful to him.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I like to dive into on this show is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's that second beating heart of the story that flows beneath typically the lover's journey. This is a little bit flip-flop because this is more of a mystery with a romantic element. So, you could
Hmm.
probably technically say the undercurrent is the romance in this, but is there something else that maybe you can identify as the undercurrent that's helping to propel the story forward?
I think for at least for this book, for certainly, Minnie is really, she's sort of starting over in some ways, and she's trying to find a new path and a new direction for where her life is going to go. She's sort of at a crossroads, I guess I would say. And Stephen is also at a crossroads, in very different ways. She's a widow. Her husband's been dead for 4 years. She has two children. Her daughter is 14. Her younger son is 8. And she's really realizing, especially in the beginning of this book, that they don't need her the way they used to in her life, especially because her husband was dead, was just so consumed by them and making sure they were okay. And now that they're, more independent, she's kind of realizing like, oh, I need something to do. I need to really focus on myself a little bit more. And
Mm-hmm.
that's partly why she ends up taking this typing job when the opportunity presents itself. So I think that her internal journey, that's a big part of it, I would say, in addition to the mystery and in addition to these sort of romantic elements. It's sort of her kind of reclaiming herself and finding something to do that doesn't really have anything to do with her role as a mother. Even though, she loves her children, she's very devoted to them.
Yeah.
But she needs, she finds something else, I guess, that she
Right.
finds fulfilling.
Yeah. And I really love that dynamic that you did between her and her daughter Cleo, where Cleo's of an age where she's wanting to kind of spread her wings a little
Hmm.
bit, and Minnie is, I guess, maybe forgetting that she was kind of like that at that age
Yeah.
too. And so I thought that that dynamic between Minnie and Cleo, and then the crotchety aunt having to remind her of all of those things, I thought was a nice dynamic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was fun to write those parts, or like very fulfilling to write those parts. And it was really important to me, for this character to feel really real and to be dealing with things that I think mothers have been dealing with no matter what
Yeah,
era,
right.
and that she went off and traveled the world and she didn't stay behind, and she kind of has forgotten that maybe her own daughter, isn't going to be satisfied to stay where she is either,
Hmm.
which is something she's sort of, it's been kind of a blind spot for her, and
Right.
she has to kind of cope with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we mentioned, this is a little bit more of a mystery with romantic elements. So typically at this point, I like to ask a little bit about the tropes that might be embedded in the story. Can you think of any tropes that would work for this story?
I mean, definitely probably like, I don't know, grumpy sunshine
Yeah,
would be one. I don't want to say enemies to lovers, but they definitely
yeah.
get off on the wrong foot.
Frenemies, maybe. I don't
Frenemies,
know. It's
yeah,
not gonna.
they're
I
the frenemies.
don't know.
Um, but there's definitely like tension there,
Hmm.
that they kind of have to work through for sure. They have kind of an antagonistic relationship.
Yes, yes. I was curious about forced proximity.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
maybe, yeah, a little bit of that because they're, she's going to his house
right,
to do the typing, and so although he's kind of ignoring her at times.
yeah, yeah.
Um, what romance book have you read recently that you would recommend and why? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Um, I am so behind on my romance books.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, I hear you.
I read Elizabeth Everett's latest book, Lady Sparks
Oh,
Aflame.
yes.
I read
She
that.
was
That
on the
was,
show not too
yeah,
long ago. Yeah, that
yes,
was
I
great.
saw that. Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
And I love how, like, I am not a STEM person at all. I am, humanities all the way.
Yeah.
But I love how she brings in the STEM elements. And I just find that really interesting.
Yes, I agree.
Um, yeah, so that was the last, I think,
The last one.
historical romance
Perfect.
that
No,
I
I like
read.
that.
Yeah, and there's a
Yeah.
lot coming out that I'm really excited for. I know
Okay.
Liana de la Rosa's next book is coming out. The Luna Sisters book. I think it's Gabriella and the Duke, and those have been really fun to read, and like integrating a part of history that you wouldn't, you don't normally read about in historical
Mm-hmm.
romance. I have an arc of Martha Waters' new book that's coming out in the fall. And then there was the one, which is like a twist on like the kind of Agatha Christie
Oh,
golden age mysteries, but it's like a romance.
yes. Okay.
So
Okay.
that's
All
right
right.
up my alley because it's
Yeah.
combining these things that I like. So
Yeah.
I have some books that I'm definitely really excited to read coming up as
Okay.
well.
All right. Great. Well, since you've been through this process a little bit of just moving into a slightly different genre here, what advice would you give writers who are interested in exploring writing in other genres?
You know, I would just do the same kind of thing you do no matter what, is read widely, read into the other genre that you're thinking about, see what's popular, see what kind of deals are being, deals writers are making, what's
Hmm.
what's different. One of the things about this book is it's set in Greece, this first book, and that was something like, well, I want to do something that's a little different because a lot of books are same with historical romance. A lot of them are set in England,
Hmm.
and a lot of them are set. It's like you want to do something fresh, but also
Right.
sticking with the stuff that readers are
Familiar.
familiar with. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of cozy mysteries are like small village kind of things, and they're set in like the 20s, or, so ways you can put a spin onto something, whether it's setting or in a different time period, I think is helpful to help you stand out a little bit in the marketplace while not just kind of writing the same. You have to have like a really good hook, I think, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And
to,
what was
to
the
get
hook that you had that you would like pitched to your agent for this particular book? Do you remember?
I remembered I said something like it was a cross between the Durrells of Corfu and the Lady Emily mysteries.
Okay.
And I think that's what I told her. And that seems to work. And
Yeah.
and I think I like the idea of her being this mom and this having these kids, and because you don't always see that. I like that
Right.
she was a little bit older, and that she's kind of been through some big life events already, and that it was in this different setting, which seems to catch, people's attention,
Yes.
and
Yes.
given that I had been to Greece a couple times, I felt like, okay, I can write this. I can do justice to this setting and this culture, hopefully.
Yeah. No, I thought you did a great job. Absolutely. Uh, Emily, before we go, can you give us a hint of what's coming up next? Will we be seeing any more of Minnie in the near future, or
Yeah,
is that Victorian romance coming out next?
both.
Give us some insights, please.
So I am working on the second Minnie Harper mystery. That's due to my editor very soon. And then I also have my next historical romance coming out in September. That's called Is This Real or Just Pretend? So
Oh,
that's the
nice.
next, yeah, trying something different.
Yeah.
So it is a Victorian historical romance. It's the second book after my last book, Duchess Material, which is centered around three sisters. So yeah, I have that coming
Yeah.
out in September, and then the next Minnie Harper book will be out a year, like next
Okay.
year. So yeah, definitely a
Busy,
little bit of everything. Yeah, busy.
busy year for you. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. It's always better
Yeah.
than the alternative,
Oh
right?
yes. Oh yes. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, great, great, great. Well, folks, be sure to order your copy of A Death on Corfu today. Emily, what social media outlets are you most active on?
Instagram is the one I'm really most active
Okay.
on these days. And it's Paperback Lady
Okay.
on Instagram.
Paperback
Yeah.
lady. All right, great. And then readers can also find out more about you at your website, which is
Yeah.
emilysullivanbooks.com, I
Yes.
believe.
Yes.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining me. Reading Death on Corfu was a true pleasure, and it was very
Great.
nice meeting you and getting to learn a little bit more about your process.
Well,
And
thank
we
you.
hope to see you again sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at tracydevlyn.com forward slash podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.